Testing the microphone. Okay, cool. All right, although I love that Perfume Genius song. A round of applause for Shaz Bennett's film. Yeah.
Hi everybody, thank you for coming, thanks for staying.
So this is your second screening with us.
Yes.
And how are you finding
But
the
this
humor?
is the first one without a youth drag workshop
That's
before
true.
it, so...
Yes. We did do a youth drag workshop yesterday. I think it was yesterday?
It was yesterday.
Okay, good. Yeah, so we had all the children do Vogue, and I learned that I am not flexible. And we also had 4 makeup artists from Blanche McDonald do their makeup, which also, by the way, takes like an hour each. And they were fabulous. The pictures will be up soon on
Drag is not easy.
It is not easy. So I'm going to have a few questions for Shaz, and then we'll open up hopefully for the audience, but we do have another screening shortly after. But we're going to take some time. So this is also my first time seeing the film. Normally I get to see them beforehand, but I've been very busy. But I love the film, and I was curious as the way in which we saw a lot of extremes, like there was like fabulousness and softness, but also violence in sometimes the same scenes. And so how did you manage that as a director, and also how did the actors kind of manage those kinds of 2 extremes in the same scenes with each other?
Yeah, I mean, you know, from the very beginning I wanted to explore gender and masculine and feminine, and why is one considered more or less, and then I worked in a fish cannery in Alaska, and you tend to daydream slicing fish all day. So I daydreamed about this. But Alaska is it was a really tough summer for me, and it was really, at times, dangerous and isolating, and but it's also just like stunningly gorgeous. And I went early for the summer. I was trying to raise money to move to New York City to become an international superstar. And,
she made it, everyone! She made it!
But I went early when the Northern Lights really are, and I'm not a particularly religious person, but I just thought, wow, there's way more in the world than I can ever dream or imagine. So I thought I was wanting to play with that, like kids that grew up there, like in the town where I was in Naknek. There was like one gay bar, and nobody said it was a gay bar. And I just thought, like, I kind of love the idea of, like, you know, the one gay bar in 100 miles from Margaret Cho's, the bartender. So you know you'd be completely safe and fabulous. And so I like the collision of worlds. I love that they created their own magic, and that it's sort of an origin story, you know, like I assume Leo gets to Los Angeles and becomes, you know,
Sequels.
RuPaul, you know, but like right now he's still figuring his power. And so I thought like it was fun to explore where he gets his power. So like whenever Martin and I would talk about, like, we had like 4 things. It would be like Grace Jones, Jimi Hendrix, Bowie,
Yeah.
and then I would say Leo, you know. And so like we kept, like, every once in a while directing, we would talk about, like, in the boxing scenes I wanted more Grace Jones, and in the drag scenes I wanted more Hendrix and Bowie, and you know, just like finding his own power and his own being. So, and Martin was in the short film. I wrote the feature first, but then I did a short film to raise money, and I cast Martin. Like, I read like 150 kids, and I read all genders and all races, and in the script he's just written as he checks other.
in those boxes, which one
any
do
of
you
those
want
boxes,
to?
he
Yeah.
always checks other. And so, so I was reading all ethnicities and all genders, and found Martin, and he's just perfectly magical. And then when we were making the feature, I needed to cast his twin sister, and Martin is half black and half Filipino, and Maya is from Toronto, is also half black and half Filipino, and they share the same last name, but they're not related. So, like, oh, they're perfectly magical.
I actually have a question about them because it's sometimes really difficult to find realistic sibling relationships, and it seemed to me like they had quite the relationship. It's like it just seemed very natural. And so, how much of their on-screen time was scripted, and how much of it was ad-libbed, or was it all like?
Everything was scripted, but then, you know, there would be times where they would just do something and I would be like, okay, do that again. But everything was scripted, but we did a Kickstarter together, the three of us, and Maya's a big YouTube star. Her name is Shameless Maya on YouTube. And so when they met, like they had a lot of, Martin was a fan of hers, so he's the one who told me, have you watched Shameless Maya? We've shared the same ethnicity, she looks like me, and I was like, no I haven't, and I watched it and I fell in love with her and wrote her on the internet and she said yes. But then when they met, they just had so many personal connections, and they were both raised by a single parent at certain times. Like Martin's the opposite, he was kind of raised by his father for a long time, so he connected to the story in other personal ways. So I think when I look back at the very first draft I wrote, it's strangely probably about 80% still there, but then when you get the actors and you cast them, of course you're going to write to them, and I wrote and directed it so I could kind of put things in. And then there's funny lines. I mean, one of my favorite lines in the with the fake ID and Margaret Cho says, "These people are white." I didn't write that; she wrote that. But I love that. You know, so every once in a while they would just throw in a line, and it was like, "Oh, that's fucking genius."
Maybe we'll take a couple of questions from the audience while we still have some time. Does anyone have any questions for Shaz or anyone? Yes, there's one in the back. Irvin, you want to run up there?
Oh, yes, run to me.
Get her!
Yes. Oh, hi. I don't even have a question. I just think you're amazing, and that film was incredible, and I was just like loving it.
Thank you so much. That's so sweet. Thank you.
I'll also mention that like one of the things I love about working with the film festival is that even though we have things like Netflix and on-demand things, what I love is literally when all of y'all were like cheering for the boxing match and the drag show, like you were at the drag, you're like, yes! And I was like, that is the power of getting together in a cinema and watching movies together.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not just plugging it forward for film festival, I just love the fact that we get to do that.
I completely agree, and I grew up, I'm from Salt Lake City, Utah originally, and I left when I was 16, running out of there as quickly as I possibly could. But there was one film festival there, the Sundance Film Festival, that's my hometown festival, and I saw, when I was like 13 years old, I saw Paris is Burning, and I was just like, oh my God, like, where are these people and how do I get to New York City? Yeah, I mean, that is the power of cinema. It changed my whole trajectory, you know?
Are you going to stick around for a few minutes after?
Sure.
Okay, we do have to put some more folks in the theater for the next screening, but Shaz is going to stick around for a bit. And
don't forget to vote.
Don't forget to vote for the film.
Don't eat the beads. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming.
Also, oh, never mind.